You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard
foul. All right, Mike. Well, the doom and gloom edition of Hard Foul is here. The Celtics blow their first 3-1 lead in the history of the franchise, going out in Game 7 against Philly at home last night where they could not make a shot to save their lives in the final 4+ minutes of basketball. And we are now at a point where this is a postseason pod. We'll call this the last official pod of this season, and then I guess we'll move on to the next season accordingly. But not a fun time to be a Celtics fan. Very disappointing ending again, which I think we're going to have to tap into, as this is another playoff series that ends abruptly and unexpectedly for the Celtics in a very disappointing fashion. And we're here with the autopsy today. And so folks know how we're going to do this. We're going to talk about the game first, Game 7. There's a lot to talk about there. We will talk about the series as a whole and the misses there. And then the season in general, looking ahead to the off season, and then any closing thoughts will go from there. Mike, we are Hard Foul. I am Jim Quigley. You are Mike Quigley, and we are presented by the what? Part of the what, I guess?
Fan First Sports Network, bitch.
That's right. So much enthusiasm. Mike, you can we were talking before the pod. I'll let you get started, but we're at kind of different levels of this right now. I didn't have much expectation for last night. I already kind of accepted this as a losing series. My most pissed off, somber feelings, I guess, came after games 5 and 6 as opposed to last night.
A lot of threes.
But you go ahead.
No 3-game losing streaks since the first 3 games of the season.
Cemetery, baby.
First team in the history of the franchise, talk about Loserville, to blow a 3-1 lead to some of the biggest losers in modern NBA history. And then on top of that, losing 3 games at home. So just
something they have done before with this group. Yeah, a kind of recurring theme.
I mean, they only lost 2 games at home last year just because they didn't have the opportunity to blow Game 7 against New York, I guess. But there's a lot of consistency in the level of whether it's not being ready to play or not showing as Jaylen Brown said after Game 6, I don't know why we didn't have the right effort. What do you mean? How can you not be playing with any urgency? I just extremely disappointed in this team. I'm not on the side of, this was a gap year, so let's chop it up to that. No, they were the favorites, and they were up 3-1, and they were up 13 points in Game 5 at home, and then went on to miss 16 straight field goals in the fourth quarter. This is just, it's really, really hard being a fan of this team in these moments because they seem to happen a lot. You go down 3-0 against the Miami Heat, who's an 8 seed. You lose 3 games at home against them in that series, and you don't get to the NBA Finals that year. You have what happened against New York last year when you were the favorite, when you blew them out every game in the regular season. And you came out and you got dominated by them. You blew 20-point leads in games 1 and game 2. And then last night, that first quarter, Game 7 at home, you come out and put up that as that's how you come out? Just turning the ball over, missing wide open shots, letting Philly get whatever they want. I think, what were they down, Jim? 15?
Well, they started 11-4 by starting a group that has never played together before. It was a kind of an insane idea.
That starting lineup. Garza up there.
Gaza, Hopper, Scheinman with Brown and White never played a minute all season together. There was one play where Brown expected a guy to
threw it into the crowd,
go to the corner because that's how their offense operates. And these guys not comfortable not having this experience. They weren't there. and it
Yeah.
just went to the bench. And I know it looked like a bad play by Brown, but I don't think it was. I think it was the inexperience of this group of not knowing where it should be. I just found that starting lineup to be insane. And this is not a
Yeah.
second guess. Like I didn't see it. I didn't know it was coming until the game started. I was at a benefit last night, so I wasn't following online what was happening. But that to me was crazy. It looked crazy, and it looked from the outset it was not going to work. The looks Embiid were getting against Gaza were just kind of walk-in 2-point jump shots from the probably the easiest shots he had all night were in that start the game.
And I think he was
It,
missing them to start the game too.
it's like it was 11-4, and you're right. It got to about 15. It was just I still don't understand it. I don't understand go with Gaza over Kata in the starting lineup. I could see Walsh and Scheinman playing. They've been starters before.
That's right.
With if you wanted to make a move with Hauser and play Walsh and put him on Maxi and then have White be a roam defender because that's what he did that a lot of the game and it's exceptional. You could understand that.
Jim, it was an overreaction to what he should have been doing all series. He was not playing these guys consistently like he did in the regular season. The guys who were making all the hustle plays and getting them to this point, they should have had an opportunity probably at game six.
Yeah.
But he decided, oh, game seven, we got to make these drastic changes. Really, the only drastic change they probably needed to make was taking Hauser out of the starting lineup and replacing him with one of those wings. That was
Yeah.
probably it. And
Yeah.
instead, he made 3 changes to the starting lineup. It was just crazy.
It was nuts. It was nuts. And his hands a little bit tied with the rest of the series with that. Like I saw Scal say that. I don't know. Like
I agree with Scal.
maybe you pull White earlier, but you can't play them all. Like it wasn't room to play them all, unless you're benching Tatum and Brown. Like I just don't know. I don't know. I think that's an easy thing to say. I think it's a much harder thing to do in practice. We can get to that in the overall series discussion. But I thought this was insane. I thought this was a huge mistake. It put your team in an immediate hole. And it got to 15, and the Celtics didn't show signs of life until he did something he should have been doing earlier in the series. Until Drummond came in and they went small in the second quarter, and they went on the run to tie the game with a beat out of the game.
Thank you, though.
And like to me, it's like you've had Tatum there the whole time. Not that Tatum has to play Drummond. I don't know if that's the best matchup, but you could have put Walsh. You could have put Hugo. You could have gone small and not played Gaza and Vucevic in those situations when Embiid went out of the game. And they didn't do that. And it took them until game 7, and it had a ton of success. And it had a ton of success without Jason Tatum. So, like, add him into the mix offensively with that group throughout the series. It was great he did it yesterday, and it got them back in the game clearly, but it was a measure that was too little too late until, and talk about the guys that were playing, Walsh didn't start. They went with these other guys, which was weird because Walsh on Maxey has worked, and then Walsh only plays 4 minutes yesterday. And I get you can't play Hugo and him together because they're redundant and they both don't score. Like, you don't have to cover either one. But the fact that he only played 4 minutes, wasn't one of your starters, there were opportunities, I thought, later in the game where he could have been helpful that we can get to. Just really curious. Like, Ron Harper hadn't played a meaningful minute the whole series, and he's starting. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. It was
Yeah.
stupid. It was. I mean, we can call it weird. It was stupid. I don't understand. I don't understand. I can't believe they blew 3 games in a row. I can't believe
Adjustments isn't throwing shit against the wall.
No,
That's not. It's actual making adjustments. And I don't know if any of the adjustments would have been enough. Just so I'm clear, in games 5 and 6, like.
Well, that was the thing. Like,
but you guys should have tried things. Yeah.
you should have putting a small on Embiid and letting your big roam. Why they waited till game 7 to do that is nuts.
It's nuts.
Yeah, especially with the foul trouble you were getting Nimi in. There was no protection of him at all. And you know what? It worked against Embiid. I know he got some easy hoops, but he was working. He was getting tired, and you were able to attack him down the other end.
And
When
Cater was doing a great job coming
When
over.
Hugo
Yeah.
went on him, and no, it worked in the fourth quarter because Jaylen Brown was blocking shots. The problem was the Celtics couldn't fucking score. That
Yeah,
was the
no,
problem.
well, it was even working before they couldn't score, and that's what got them back into the game is that adjustment defensively, to your point. Like it worked. And I don't know why they didn't go to it. It also helps Derek White in a lot of ways too to kind of be that off defender. I don't know why. And the other point in this game where we got to get to the end with the missed shots and what happened in that fourth quarter. Jaylen Brown goes out of the game with 4:47 left to go in the third quarter. It's an 11-point game, and Embiid goes out too. That point on, the they the Sixers go on 11-3 run in about 2 minutes.
Oh, and they went up 18.
He went up 18. I got to tell you, that's not on Missoula. That's on your team not getting stops when your best players. 2 minutes. We're talking 2 minutes, and their best players on the bench too, and guys like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard not getting you anything to keep it connected. If you just kept this even to 12 to 13 points, just the Celtics go on a 9-2 run, they end up getting it to 12 to end the quarter because Brown comes back in and the offense gets going again. He was mostly very good yesterday. There's a lot of bad for him in this series, but Jaylen Brown was mostly very, very good yesterday.
Yeah.
They go on a 9-2 run to start the fourth. So the lead's down to 6. If you stay connected, there's a chance you're actually up after a 9-2 run. And the whole complexion of the game is completely flipped at that point. It's completely flipped. Now all the pressure's on Philly. The shot they were 2 or 18 going into the final 2.5 minutes before Maxey made a drive and layup in that fourth quarter. Philly was imploding. Like they were imploding.
Yeah, I thought we were going to win.
I thought, yeah. And so
I thought they were going to win.
that 5 minute stretch was bad, but that third quarter, that 2 minutes of 11-3 run, to me, that's the ball game also.
Yeah, well, the series was lost in game 2 and game 5. But I mean, they had it, Jim. They had it. They were right there, and Brown misses that jumper he always hits. He misses Nimi wide open for just a dunk where nobody's going to be near him, and he goes to Peyton Pritchard for a 3. They got a lot of good looks. I'm probably missing 1 or 2 good looks that they got, and they didn't hit any of them.
Yeah, so I went back on that Nimi play. I've watched it like 50 times now. So the guy that actually screwed up is Derek White.
Whoever screwed up, they didn't get the ball.
They didn't get the ball to him. So Derek White delivers the ball to Brown. Nimi already has a step. White needs to take one more dribble. He has a perfect angle. It's a dunk. Brown could have still got it to him. Level of difficulty is a little bit harder. It's still, I would have rather that than Pritchard. That was a missed opportunity. The Hauser run out was a missed opportunity. I watched that a bunch. I don't know who's more at fault there, Hauser or Brown. I think Hauser still should have been able to retain the basketball. The missed foul line jump shot wide open when Brown got away with the push off.
Oh.
Wide open, missed it. And then the one I still can't believe it didn't go in was Brown got an absolute clean rook from the top of the 3-point line, and three quarters of the way in. So
that was the first shot when they were down by 2.
Yeah.
And to Philly's credit, they made some tough shots. I mean,
it was Maxey. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Season's over. So
can I talk about another Joe decision? And this is a second guess. The other ones I like was real time, and some of the stuff later in the game is real time. Nebe goes to the line, and they're down 3. It was that loose ball foul. Remember, it was the only time they scored in the last 4.5 minutes. I thought it was, looking back, I thought that was a great opportunity to get Jordan Walsh in. You seem to have really worn out Embiid, where he wasn't really impacting the game anymore. Maxey now becomes the really most dangerous player, and because Hauser's in the game, Nemi can't play that mid drop. He has to come up, and once he comes up, I mean, it's not really his fault that Maxey's going to blow by him. You have Jordan Walsh in there. it's a 1 point game. There's reasons with 2.5 minutes to be playing defense, offense. And you have Jordan Walsh in there. You can defend that differently and make that more difficult. That said, I mean, you still got to make shots, and they didn't. But that'd be a nitpick, and that's an extreme nitpick.
Yeah, and they
Guys.
also had a lot of lazy possessions where they didn't get good 3-point looks and they were just launching. They had some possessions where it was in rhythm where they were driving to the basket, but there was just too much in this series where they were not attacking Drummond and Embiid and having them come up and drive into the
Oh,
paint.
yes,
Lazy ISO
yeah,
ball. There was way too much in the series where Jaylen
yep.
Brown was bringing the ball up as the point guard and dribbling the air out of the ball, not running any of the offense that worked for them during the regular season. And it was inefficient, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick. We had to watch it against the fucking Knicks last year, and we had to watch it again in this series. Something's got to change. I don't know if it's a different player that's coming in that forces them to, take more shots inside the perimeter. That's a guy who's efficient in there, but something's got to change because it keeps happening to them where they lose these games and you look at the stat sheet and it's 13 of fucking 50 from three, 12 of 47 from three. And you go back and you watch the tape and it's because they weren't running any offense other than running an ISO and then taking somebody off the dribble and shooting a three or making one or two passes and the guy coming off a screen and shooting a contested three. I mean, even like the Baylor Shireman step back three, air ball with like 14 seconds left in the shot clock. You had Derek White take some of those last night. And then after the game, you have the coach once again saying shit like, I don't get disappointed after these losses. I really look at it as the whole scope and how I enjoyed the season. And no, I don't think we took any bad shots. Like, what do you mean? If we made more, we would have won. Well, if you took more good ones, you might have won. You might have won. If you go to the paint more, you might win. If you post up a guy, you might win. Like Philly ran good offense. You didn't.
Philly didn't in the fourth quarter, but most of the game they did.
Most of the last three games.
Yeah, there was an implosion happening by them in the fourth. I actually thought the offense was fine last night. I think they were limited with personnel, and they did what they did all season. I thought the offense was a problem in games, 2, 6, and 5. You go back and you look at the misses down the stretch. There was only one that was contested, and that was Jaylen Brown's foul line jump shot.
That's the last 3 or 4 minutes. They started to play good offense during that comeback. But for the majority of that game, when they were down 18, they were down 15, they weren't taking good shots. They weren't running good sets.
I disagree. I thought they were getting good looks most of the game. There was a stretch where they went small in the third, but you're talking about the Shireman. That was really bad. And I don't understand why they went small because Embiid was eating them up. You can't go small against Embiid. That was a mistake for like a 2-minute stretch. But I thought on the whole last night was mostly good. It wasn't perfect, but it was mostly good. I thought the other games were not. And I thought it more emphasizes your point. I thought the other games were disaster class offense.
Yeah, I think we're at the point now where, like, shooting 49 to 53s in the playoff game doesn't work. It just doesn't. It doesn't win you championships. It worked for Golden State. They're the outlier. And nobody in the NBA, nobody that's competing right now is doing that except the Celtics. And they're out.
I agree. I agree. I'm not going to argue that point. I thought last night the personnel dictated the way they played. I thought their personnel, like what they had on the floor, it's how they had to play to win. They weren't. There wasn't a ton of talent or like shot creators. They only had a couple, so they had to play. They weren't. They're not better. Like that team last night is not better than Philly. So they needed some luck. They needed to create offense how they know how to do it, and so. But I will say, why was it the first game that Brown was getting screens from Keita at the top of the circle? Why didn't that happen earlier? Why did it have to wait to Game 7? It was clearly they could guard him one-on-one. They showed that all series, and they didn't make that. To me, that blows my mind.
It really does.
Because it was effective last night. It was very effective. They got a ton of good looks. I don't know. Last night didn't bother me. The rest of the series really bothered me.
You bring up a good point about personnel. I think they need somebody. They need a player
Would have been nice to have Simons last night, huh?
They need a player. I mean, we had it with Porzingis, and that was big. They need a player who can score within that inside the perimeter consistently. You
Hmm.
know, Indiana almost won with it. If Tyrese Halliburton didn't get hurt last year, Pascal Siakam was going to be the MVP of that series because of his ability to do that over and over and over again. And the Celtics, when we get into these fourth quarters,
They don't have anyone.
it
No.
seems like a common story where they just can't get good looks, or they,
Eh,
yeah,
and think about like on their roster, Mike. If we let's just be fair, because some of this is Missoula and some of this is roster building.
yeah,
Who is that guy in that team that could do that?
Jaylen Brown,
But he's got the ball at the top.
yeah,
So is
that's
he
it.
supposed to do both? Like who? Like Vucevic was supposed to be that guy that was supposed to be able to get you switches, and he wasn't.
Horrible.
There is no one on that roster that can do that. It's kind of an embarrassment that they don't have anyone on the roster that can take advantage of switches like that outside of your two top players that you're using also to facilitate the offense. So you can't do both.
Yeah, they have to make some real
Uh,
changes. They have
you
to.
know,
And to Missoula, I don't want to call him a bad coach. I don't think he does terrible job. But when your team now under his coaching has lost the way they lost this
yeah,
series,
it's fair.
lost the way they lost to the Knicks,
Yep.
lost the way they lost to Miami, outside of having a super team, that now the Celtics have to deal with this story. Played against injured teams, whether that's fair or not, people are going to bring this stuff up. Like, there is the argument that I don't know how you fire Missoula and replace him because there aren't great coaches out there anymore. But I mean, they can't keep losing this way, and he's the coach. So I, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm not for firing the guy, but if there's a better coach out there, I am.
I think it's a real fair criticism now with three or four, the way these things have ended, going down 3-0 to the Heat, and then, losing. You lost game seven because Tatum got hurt, but you should never been there
Should have been. Yeah.
against the Heat. So losing three out of four. You lost the way you did against the Knicks. We don't have to rehash. And then, this series where you had them 3-1.
Yeah.
Honestly, if now looking back at this, if Embiid was there from game one, Philly's probably the more talented team. Like, it's hard to like really argue that now. Like it was something I missed.
He
But
was
yeah, but
outside of his
yeah,
flopping. He was really
he,
good.
he was
And
really
that
good.
block shot he had on Jaylen Brown to end the first half last night is underrated and people aren't talking
Yeah,
about it.
I
And
didn't
then he
think he
comes
had.
down on the next possession and
Yeah,
blocks Derek White at the rim. Those were
yeah,
two huge
yeah,
plays.
yeah. And so yeah, he was good on both ends of the floor, and I didn't think he could do that anymore. So
Dominate.
like, tip your cap. I
And
do
you
think
would have
he's.
thought Paul George had 30 points last night, but he only had 15 because every
Yeah.
shot he hit seemed like the perfect timed 3-pointer or something.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. I still can't stand Embiid. I still don't think he's going to pass the second round again. I think they're going out against the Knicks, and but we'll see. I guess I don't want this to be a Sixers podcast because I'll have to throw up in the middle of it.
I,
But
I don't want to talk about it either.
I what were we talking about before that? Oh, so the Missoula's coaching, yeah, and so you go down that road. Like there are, I think it's, and you've brought it up before, and you're right, and I think I've pushed back on you. This is in-game adjustments in the playoffs and in series adjustments are really, he's slow to react. He's really slow or he's non-reactive at all. I I don't know how we didn't see them go small. That start in five was a panic move. I think there's a lot to look at this offense. In games five and six of just being stagnant, of trying to go one on one, where it was very clear that if you run the pick and roll, and now we knew you could have done it with Brown too, but if you ran the pick and roll with Tatum and got him on Embiid or Drummond, you were going to get a good shot just about every single time. And
Um,
if they stopped it the first time through, run it again in the
yeah.
same offensive set. Like there wasn't really an answer for it. I think the Celtics averaged almost a point and a quarter when they ran that, going at Embiid and Drummond, and they would just get away with it. And you would see offensive sets starting with Tatum in the corner and Brown going one-on-one against Oubre or somebody and just not going anywhere. And
Fucking hero.
yeah, and it would just be infuriating to watch. You know, and then hey, there are other guys that need to take a lot of the blame outside of Joe Mazzulla though in this series too.
Yeah.
Derek White, you know, his inability to make shots really, really hampered them in a
You think?
huge way. Nimi Keita, inability to stay on the floor. I mean, how impactful was he? Do you think that would have been nice to have for big minutes in the series last night? Clearly the best center. His inability to stay on the floor. Brown, we spent a lot of time on. I don't
We
think he
haven't
had a good
talked about his
series.
floor play. We talked about how he played well in Game 7. Jalen
Yeah,
Brown was a disaster in this series.
I agree. Yeah,
A
I agree.
disaster. How many turnovers per game did he end up averaging?
I,
Was it more than two?
it was quite a
Maybe it's
bit.
one, but it just seemed like a lot.
A lot of missed free throws.
Oh, God.
Wasn't filling the box sheet in other areas, so he
Oh,
wasn't being a facilitator either. Yeah, and going one on one constantly. And then game 5 at home, look, Tatum deserves a big slice of that blame, where
big
he
a shit pie
gave
from
it
him.
gave them nothing offensively to get them going when you needed your star player to get going. And we're gonna have to spend some time just on the decision not to play him and
Was
going
the right
forward with
decision.
him. Yeah. So like there is a lot of blame to go around on this thing. They all share in it. I you know I kind of lean on Nemi a lot less. First playoff series for him where he got extensive minutes, lot to learn. Derek White, you expect more. Jalen Brown, you expect more. They should be able to pick up a guy like Nemi that's struggling, and they did not.
Yeah.
And you had the guy coming off the Achilles having to, and he was their best player, having to be a best player through the first 6 games, and that probably wasn't going to work because as we talked about going into the pod, one of the concerns we had is like if Brown isn't going, can Tatum be that 30, 35 point guy or triple double guy consistently to get this stuff? And
He kind of was.
he was kind of was, but it wasn't quite. There was never that. Oh my God, he just took over the fourth quarter Tatum playoff game or like a
Um,
40 point. Like he just, it didn't feel like it was getting. There was no game 4 Knicks before he got hurt. You weren't. That wasn't coming, and I don't think it. And that isn't a criticism of him. I don't think that would have been fair to ask, but I, yeah,
he
a
needed it
lot.
from Jalen Brown, is who they needed it from.
Yeah,
And I mean, I remember, I think it was on the pod we talked about this as early as Game 1. I was texting you saying he didn't look right. Something seemed off. He couldn't blow by people as he hurt. He I don't think he was hurt. I know he talked about his ankle. I think he just had a really hard time
I think it was Philly
with,
defenders.
with the Philly defenders being up in his
Yeah,
chest, like as soon as he crossed half court, and he just, he didn't really adjust or have any help adjusting until Game 7. Um, and then when it was crunch time, when they needed him most in Game 7, he didn't deliver. He didn't
I
deliver with an MVP.
I put that more on Brown than Missoula with the adjustment.
I
That
do
is a
too. I'm
guy.
just saying,
Yeah,
other front see that.
that is a guy with the type of resume and Conch that he can kind of do what he wants, and it wasn't happening. Now Missoula has to step in at some point, but even so, Brown's on the floor. He can make that decision, and there's not a lot outside of Missoula benching him, which I don't know how you do. Yeah,
Can't bench.
it was a bad friggin' series for him. Just a bad series. Mike, the biggest storyline going into the game, about a half hour, 45 minutes before the game, Tatum was ruled out, and it was the happiest moment for me last night. I was, when I saw him grabbing I thought it was, I didn't believe them one bit after the game when they said, oh, he was fine. The game was out of reach in game 6. He came out with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter in game 6, 4 minutes to go. He's grabbing his calf. He was grabbing his calf before that. Clearly, they're running him through a drill. Something wasn't right. And then, Philly went on that run, but it was 15 points, I think. In the NBA, the Celtics were down 18 last night, and they got it to within one, right? So in the NBA, like you can make with Jason Tatum, you can make up 15 points even when things seem dead. We see it all the time in this league, all the time. We saw it the other night with the Pistons in the second half. Like things just change quickly, very, very quickly. He didn't come out for the fourth, so that means he's hurt. You know, this is a playoff clinching game.
Yeah.
That means he's hurt. And so, like, when they started talking about him being fine and was going to play, I thought that was weird because I thought it was kind of setting him up now if he doesn't play to look like he's backing out. And I think he's going to get some grief for that now. But I thought they made the absolute right decision. Because if this something happened to him last night, if he had another Achilles, God forbid, I don't think I would have ever forgiven the Celtics.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about it. I don't think he's soft. He's not been soft his whole career. He putting him out there would have been really risky. Obviously, that was the right decision. This team wasn't getting through the second round anyways, so it was the right decision. So
Yeah, and he said in his interview today, his whatever they do when the season ends interviews, that he thought he could probably come back at some point for round two. So it wasn't like he wasn't coming back for game one. That's what that tells me when he says something like that, and when he says something like that, I wonder if
he wasn't coming back at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He needs the off season to get it. I mean, that's going to be a worry he's going to have to deal with now for probably the rest of his career. So, yeah, Jim, fun regular season. I'm not going to take away from the amount of fun I had this year because it was fun. They played hard, a lot of likable guys. But the way this ended, once again, I found myself in overreaction mode about what they should do. So I don't know if this is the best time to talk about off-season stuff on this pod, but if you want to go there, you can share your thoughts.
My thoughts, and we'll start here and then we'll go to the off season. You can let me know what you think. If you had told me back at the beginning of the season that they were going to win 56 games, I would have called you crazy. I would have said there's no way. Yeah, that was the position I took. So they highly exceeded my expectations. If you told me that Tatum was going to come back and look like an all-star, not Jason Tatum, but an all-star, I would have told you, all right, I don't care what happens in the playoffs. This is already a win. That's what I would have told you then. Now, obviously, things changed. They won 56 games. They were up 3-1, so they failed. Like, the circumstance of the way the season ended, they failed. It doesn't change the fact that they maximized their effort in the regular season. To me, that was gratifying. I loved it. But I want the same in the playoffs. I want them to maximize their effort. I wanted them to get to round two. They were up 3-1. I wanted more basketball. Now, if New York just went out and smoked them in the next round, they lost 4-1, and it was clear mismatch, talent deficient. Maybe Tatum doesn't play because of injury, or they get by and Tatum does play, and we'd have to come back on the spot and say it was a great season. They got their ass kicked by a better team. There would have been some angry as the series was going on, but I think that's how you probably would have ended it. And that would have been fine to me because that means they would have maximized their postseason. They got the most that they possibly can and ran into a better team. I think Philly was a better team, but they were up 3-1. And they were up 13 to go in the third quarter. They were up one going into the fourth quarter of game 5 to close them out. And they had the worst fourth quarter I think I've ever seen in my life. Just a non-compete fourth quarter in game 5 and a game to close them out. No sense of urgency. So they didn't maximize, they failed. So I can on one hand say that regular season, I love the team, great success. I'm so happy about the Tatum stuff. I think going into next year, there's a lot to be optimistic because of the Tatum stuff. But it's a failure at the end of the day.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, the Simons trade for Vucevic, I wish they did something different there.
Oh, let's talk about stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Had they kept Simons, I don't know. I think he had a broken wrist, didn't he? So he didn't play.
Something to that. Yeah, I forget. Yeah, you might be right. Yeah.
I don't know how Brad got away with that. But obviously Chicago didn't care because they were tanking, so maybe that's
They
why.
just wanted the picks. Yeah, they didn't care.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Um, but maybe there's another guy out there that they should have been going after because Vucevic was not good the entire time he was here. That was a miss. And to your point about Game Five too, just so I can say it before I forget, the first half of Game Five, Philly wasn't playing hard. Philly looked like they were ready to pack it in. Joel Embiid was standing around the 3 point line, just taking really bad shots. And the problem was the Celtics were going through the motions too. They weren't ready to play. And that to me is just another example of the frustration I have with this team because they could have been up by 25 going into halftime. And then there is no close fourth quarter because Philly's not coming out to play in the second half. Philly came out to play in the second half that game because you let them believe they could win.
Yeah, and the coach made an adjustment, and you didn't adjust to it. They put Embiid on the block against Vucevic after, Kata picked up a really stupid foul in the backcourt,
Mm-hmm.
and he came out with his fourth. And they went to it like 6, 7 straight times and scored, and just continued to score, continued to score, continued to score. And Missoula just sat there. Like
Yep.
this was the opportunity to, you know,
Try
what you
something
talked about,
different.
maybe it's Brown on him, and you have the center kind of on Oubre playing the rim protection role. Maybe you roll the dice with Cater with four a
Mm-hmm.
lot sooner, and you go to that adjustment. But it didn't happen, and the offense was easy. And credit Nick Nurse, he completely, after it felt like the Celtics had figured them out in Game 4, and then it looked that way in the first half of Game 5. Even though the Celtics, weren't playing as hard as you said, they were still the better team.
Mm-hmm.
It just it took its toll. It really took its toll, and I think it's one of those things where the momentum of Philly making baskets at the rate they were doing it, and that it put made the Celtics press on the other end and made some really dumb decisions offensively. And there could have been ways to settle it down. So like, yeah, it just gets back to the point of like Missoula needs to be better there. And maybe it doesn't work. Maybe you lose anyways. Well, you can't go down. I mean, Vucevic was offering no resistance. No resistance at all. And it was just back down after back down. And then the double came and Philly was hitting the rotations and beats a great pass. So you forget how fucking good he is.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes out there and does that. So I, yeah. And the Simons trade stuff, I will say this about the deadline, and this kind of ties right into the offseason. And this ties into the beginning of the season. We, to our credit, me and you, we spoke, and I actually wrote it in print. You can go on our website and find it. At the beginning of the season, there was a non-zero chance that Jason Tatum's able to come back. This team stays above water. Jason Tatum is able to come back, and you're in compete mode this year. Like, I didn't think it was going to happen, but there was a non-zero chance that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so all your moves to get under the cap, are you then taking advantage of Brown and Tatum in one of their prime years? Are you maximizing your chances to win it when both these guys could be on the floor in the playoffs? And I would say no. And so their decision was clear to get under the luxury tax line. It feels to me they're going to want to do it again this offseason, which is incredibly disappointing. The trade they made was more based off of financials to bring in Vucevic. It bolstered their center position a little bit, not very much.
Mm-hmm.
There were guys like Nick Claxton out there on the trade block.
Yep.
Maybe you offer a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, how do you think Nick Claxton would have done on a maxi pick and roll compared to Cato or Vucevic? I would tell you it's a lot better.
Yeah.
So there, but you would not have saved enough money, and you might not have got under that tax line. And so I think there's questions to be asked. Now you could say Nick Claxton isn't enough to get you past the Knicks this year, so it doesn't matter. That's a reasonable argument to make. But next year, you have a lot of assets on your team, and some of them are redundant. Shyman and Hopper might be redundant. There might not be a reason to keep both guys. I think Hugo and Walsh. I think Hugo's got more upside, but he's also got more trade value. Those guys kind of redundant in some ways. Hopefully Hugo's able to elevate the offensive game, and it's not redundant anymore. But you have some redundancy in guys that have value. You have taxpayer. I mean, you got traded player exemptions that you can use. You got $30 million contract in Derek White that you could either keep him, but he could be an asset. Sam House's $10 million contract. He's still an asset. Sam Hauser played well yesterday. Like, he deserves criticism, but I think he always plays to his level, and like he's a good player, and he shouldn't be a starter, but he's a valuable asset for $10 million a year. Even paid in Pritchard's contract. We'll see what happens. He's up for. You can renegotiate it. He probably won't want to because his contract's so small. He probably can't make as much as he can on the open market. But these things are all right there. So what are they going to do? They have this year, for the first time ever, a $15 mid-level exception. Are they going to use it? They're going to use it if a player's available to help them. I will tell you right now, don't believe the argument when they say, oh, we're doing this so we get out all these penalties and the next year we can be all in and do whatever we want. And so we're going to waste another year of Brown and Tatum. We're going to let them get a year older. I
would do that.
I would be upset if you end up trading Brown because you make your team better. Like, I don't know. I'll have to see what that is. If it makes your team better, like, I'll have to listen to it and take a look. But if it's the only way to make your team better and you end up trading him because you won't spend in other areas and it keeps you under that number because it's a max contract for a max contract, then I'm going to be a little, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
If your only move to make is to trade Brown for Giannis because you won't spend with the money and assets available to make Tatum and Brown better as an option, and I can't even measure what option would be better. I can't even say, okay, you can do all this with Brown and Tatum, and that gets you to this level, or you trade for Giannis. But if it's only one option because you got to stay under a financial number, that's unacceptable to me. And we'll see what happens. But my guess is they're going to make financial decisions here. And
they're probably going to trade their first round pick for second round picks. They're probably going to do a bunch of that kind of stuff and bring back basically the same roster next year.
Yeah, like the argument. So you're locked into being the end of the draft. They're picking the 27th this year.
I know.
The Celtics are going to win 50+ games next year, no matter what. They're not going to be in the friggin' lottery. They're going to play harder than everybody during the regular season and get wins. Like, we know that now.
Uh-huh.
So like, what's the point? And I think that's what we're going to have to watch because they do. One of the benefits of this year is like these players have some value. They're not blue chip prospects, but they're going to be guys that teams want.
Yeah.
And so, like, and the Celtics have flexibility.
And there's going to be guys available. This is the thing that always happens in the NBA. There's going to be guys available. If Cleveland loses tonight, for example, there's going to be a whole roster of guys available around the NBA to talk about. Does Mitchell fit better than Jason Tatum than Jaylen Brown does? I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying in general.
He doesn't fit better than Jason Tatum.
But I'm just saying in general, around the league, there's going to be, Evan Mobley's might be available if they lose,
Or even Jared Allen. He would look pretty good as a Celtics center, right?
Anthony Davis is already saying he won't play for Washington. You have Giannis situation. Jokic's post-game show. I'm not saying Jokic is going to demand a trade, but he didn't seem like he liked Denver anymore. You don't know with the NBA. It's so unpredictable. that if you're unwilling to go above the tax, you're not going to compete because somebody else is going to get these super teams still because their owners will pay for it. Kawhi Leonard's probably not going to be a Clipper next year, right? So like there's so much movement that's always going around the league with teams that want to compete and not want to compete. And the Celtics are pretending to want to compete if they are unwilling to spend money.
Yeah,
If they
and the
make
week
financial decisions, they're just pretending to compete.
and the week is East. I mean, the East is weak. It's
Yeah.
clearly there's. I feel like there's one really good team in the Knicks, and everyone else is just kind of okay. And you get what if you got past this round? You had a better center, and you had some good luck against the Knicks next round. What if
Mhm.
the flip happened from last year?
Yeah, exactly.
You
But we don't know that.
but and then all of a sudden you play in the NBA Finals. Like
Mhm.
I just think throwing away seasons. They get a mulligan for this year. Like there's arguments what they could have done. They get a mulligan because of the Tatum Achilles from team building, not the end of the season. I want to be clear, not this 3-1
Yeah, I get what
from
you're saying.
team building. To me, they don't next season. To me, like this offseason is I want to see that this ownership's all in. I just don't want to see him just shaking hands with his players after the game and going to all the games and be like, "Oh, he really cares." So show me you really care.
Yeah.
This is you bought this team for a shitload of money, so show me you really care.
Yeah. And as far as the offseason goes, I am leaning into the side of starting to explore a world with somebody else playing with Jason Tatum and Derek White and Jalen Brown. Seeing what's out there. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side. Maybe this isn't the tandem to go forward with anymore. Not saying that Tatum and Brown can't play together. It's obvious they can play together. Can they continue to win together? Is the question I'm having after these last two playoff runs. And maybe it's better for Jalen Brown to go win somewhere else. And maybe there's a guy like a Giannis, for example, that if he was playing here in Boston with Jason Tatum, would be the Giannis that, you know, used to show up all the time and play. That kind of talent's on the trade market. I think you have to
Yeah,
take it's an MVP level talent. And a guy who shoots 62% from the floor still, that you have to consider, that option. I think the Celtics have to now but then to your point, if it's just Giannis and nothing else because you don't want to, what's the point? What's
yeah.
what's the point of that?
I just caution on Giannis and any guy like that. He's averaged about has he even played 50 games over the last few years.
Well, this
He's
year
getting
he didn't play that. He played
uh,
67 games last year. This year he has. I mean, his average has been
and
63,
he's
61,
been out,
63, 73, 67.
but he
So
hasn't. I should rephrase that. He
the
hasn't been
postseason
available.
he's been
He
out.
hasn't been available in the playoffs. He's getting older. He's not getting younger.
Well, he's the
I,
same age as Jalen Brown. So Brown's turning 30, Giannis is turning 32. I mean, they're not that different.
more miles on Giannis. He in the league longer. He has more injuries. He's missed more time. And my only caution, like I'm willing to listen to whatever the offers are, and then kind of measure if this team's going to be better or not. I am not a big Giannis guy, but I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I would just say this too. Tatum, this was not his best, right? We can agree what we saw. It was very
Yeah,
good.
what was best?
So Brown had to be a 1A. I think we saw that he's not really a 1A. Let's see what this looks like coming back next year where Tatum's Tatum again. And he is now the
Weren't they
guy.
back last year?
Yeah, they were, and they didn't get to where they wanted to go. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's why I mean,
But the year before they won the title, and the 2 seasons before that they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. So it's like, or they were in the finals. So it's not like it's been a complete failure either. I mean, like it's had a ton of success. There's no guarantee that you're going to get to what they were before with something else, is what I'm saying. Like, you're going to have, if Tatum's at his best and Brown is accepting that other role, you're going to be on the doorstep.
yeah, but I'm
There's no,
intrigued by it. I'm intrigued by this kind of talent. I mean,
I am open to Derek White for sure.
I'm like very open to the idea of Giannis playing with Tatum. I don't know how you defend it.
You
I
understand it
guess
takes the balls out of Tatum's hands, right?
I think both guys would have to give up a little bit for it to work. They both would have to be a little unselfish, similar to like what Miami did when their team came together. But I mean, I'm intrigued by it. And as far as Derek White goes,
Yeah, but Giannis can't play off the ball.
well, he can. He just chooses not to. He can post up. I mean, he's a great post up player. And
So yeah, I
I
for
think there's
that.
a coach out there that could figure out a way to make that work. I mean, Giannis has won a ring. He has. Um, and I mean, he's performed at the highest level just like Jaylen Brown has. I think Jason Tatum and Giannis could figure out how to play together. I think they're both good enough to figure that out, Jim, if they wanted to.
I don't know if Giannis. It would have to be Tatum that would have to accept the role reduction and a different. I don't think that's in Giannis.
And maybe Tatum would have to.
I do not believe Giannis is a selfless player. I don't think he's a selfless person, and I don't think he's. Well, I think there's character issues there.
I don't know. I mean, I don't. On the
Do
floor,
you do you have to take his full, bring on all his siblings too, and all the
well,
other bullshit that come with
no,
it?
I wouldn't make the trade
Because
if I had to do
that has really hurt Milwaukee. Think about the end of the Celtics bench and now the trade chips they have compared to what Milwaukee has had.
Yeah, I think that would have to be part of the discussion that we're not doing that. These are the things if you're going to come here. But
Giannis has gotten
I
two
don't see
coaches fired.
why. I don't see why it couldn't work with Giannis as the lead guy and Tatum not. I mean,
Well, that's
Tatum.
the only way it would have to work.
Yeah, I mean,
You would have to accommodate everything to Giannis.
yeah,
Coaching, players, roster, all of it.
maybe not. You don't know that. I mean,
Well, I'm just going off the evidence of him the
yeah,
last
but
few
I mean,
years.
the things like this were said about like Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett.
No, there was not. No, not this stuff. They never behaved at anything other than winners where they were before they came here.
Well, first off, they never won before they came here. But I get what you're saying. What I'm saying is before they came here, there were questions of could they give up and be unselfish on the offensive end? There were questions about that. Were they going to be willing to do that? Because Kevin Garnett always had the ball in his hand when he was in Minnesota. Always. Ray Allen always had the ball in his hand when he was in Seattle and Milwaukee. The offense always ran through them. Even when he played with Stephon Marbury.
There might have been that question, but there wasn't character issues. They didn't get coaches fired. They didn't demand roster. They weren't a trouble for their GM. Like they were good locker room. You talk to Kevin Garnett's teammates. If anything, he was just too crazy and demanded too much of them. But
Mhm.
like he was, Giannis is. Look, it's hard not to look past some of the stuff that has happened and wonder, does that come with him? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it can change, but like it has not been good over the last 4 years.
I just think you have to look at it because what we just watched again, you just lost three straight games. You're up 3-1. And last year was the same thing with these no shows in these big moments by these guys. Like,
And Giannis hasn't played in the playoffs in 3, 4 years. Just has not been available.
well, he played 24-25. So
Not
what
the
was
whole
that last
series.
year?
No, he wasn't available.
We played 5 games. He was averaging 33 points a game. So he played 5 postseason games. I don't know how many they played as a team. They lost in 7 to Indiana, right? So he played in
Yeah,
5 and 7.
yeah, not
Um,
available.
yeah.
Like so like I just
I mean, he was more effective when he was available than Jaylen Brown's been. I mean, Jaylen Brown was available, but how effective was he? Outside of the championship run, you could argue he hasn't been that effective in big moments in the playoffs. I really am thinking they have to move on from him. And maybe it's not Giannis. It might be another player, but I'm ready. I think it's time to make some of these changes. And with Derek White, I just hope Derek White has the value that all these announcers talk about around the league, because these conversations like that were going around about him of like being a top 5 player in the NBA. But that's his value on the market, to make that fucking trade now. He's
I
turning
think
32.
I think coaches value him at a high level, and he's valuable to a team that's on the precipice.
Yeah.
Let's say the Spurs don't get over the hump. The Spurs know him. He'd probably have some significant value there
Uh-huh.
as a guy that would fit right in, a veteran, a champion that has won. And there's probably a few other places. He's obviously not going to a rebuilding team. That's you only do that if you're trying to salary dump him, which
Would
I
you
don't think
trade him for
they would
Jalen
do.
Suggs?
I would hope they could do better than that.
Uh-huh.
Suggs is just another guy that you don't know is going to be available.
Because he's hurt a lot.
He's hurt a lot. Yeah, like I'd at that point would just rather Derek White and the flaws that he has, because at least you getting 78 games from him, and he still has the propensity to step up in big moments, and yeah, like
His
I would
market's going
struggle
to
with
be.
that one.
Yeah, I don't know what you get for him because his contract's weird. He's not a max player,
No,
so I don't know how that works with all these rules either. Because the Celtics can combine contracts to trade for a player, right? Because they're under that first apron. So they
yeah,
could take Derek White with Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard
yeah,
and then package
yeah.
that
You
for
could, you
whatever,
could.
right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So like I don't know, like the Suns wouldn't want to do this, but like a guy like Jalen Green, when he was still on Houston, maybe Houston would think, oh, that would have been a good pairing if Green wasn't involved in the Durant trade with Durant.
mhm.
Something like that. You don't know how it shakes out, but um yeah, maybe there's a big out there, that becomes redundant somewhere. Is there a world where Evan Mobley becomes available and, there's a 3-team trade and the contracts match that way?
Yep. Yep.
Those are the type of things I think, you know,
Would you package players for a guy like Anthony Davis?
no.
You wouldn't even want to at all.
I
Huh?
don't think you're maximizing. I just don't trust, like, these guys don't really change when they go to other teams anymore. They are
What
who they
about
are,
um what
you
about a
know?
guy like Because I feel like Indiana would really like Derek White.
Yeah,
What about a guy like Pascal Siakam to pair him with Tatum and Brown?
that could work.
And I was
Yeah,
thinking about that off the pod because he's the guy that they could go to in the fourth quarter. He's the guy that can get big buckets, who can shoot the 2-point shot, who can post up, who can ISO efficiently, get to the free throw line a lot. He has defensive problems.
yeah,
He has big time defensive
yeah.
problems. But he's kind of a big time player. And I wonder if Indiana would be open to like a Derek White, Sam Hauser. They seem to like that equity of talent.
Maybe. Yeah. You'd have to do. I'd really have to spend some time. I'm not a
Yeah.
Siakam expert of whether that actually makes you better or not. Obviously, he was really good in the playoffs last year. So, I mean, that's something I'd listen to. I just don't have interest in guys that are unavailable or there's character issues. I, I just don't want to put up with that, especially if they're veterans. I just think in this league, we tend to think they're going to get to a new place and they're going to be different. That doesn't happen as much as people think it does. They tend to just be the same guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which makes
Or
it
they
tough
revert back to being the same guy.
because those are the only guys that are typically available. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are like guys that aren't superstars that are available that could be just the type of guy you want and need. And it's like, does it, yeah, it's tough.
Do you think
Uh,
Jokic is going to be available at some point? Do you think he's going to make himself available?
doesn't really rub me the guy type of guy that's going to demand a trade.
Not
Um,
outwardly, but do you think
you
it could
know,
be internally that he's asking for it? That there's
I
conversations?
I
Because
think
his
he'll.
press conference to me was like, yeah,
To me, that was more of let's. Yeah, I don't. The one thing I'll say is like his ownership group is cheap, and they have to
yeah,
like make cover up decisions. because they're not willing to go the extra mile, and they've made some really bad ones. Cam Johnson didn't work out. Clearly, that was a really bad trade.
Mhm.
And but Cam Johnson was probably more than they should have got because of Michael Porter Jr. That trade was really a salary dump.
I
And
wish they dumped him to us.
yeah, that was really a salary dump more than anything else. He's a guy that could be available.
He's definitely available.
Yeah, he's a guy that could be available. So, is there a world where the Celtics, a Derek White, Michael Porter Jr. like three-way trade somehow, like something like
Yeah,
that?
and he doesn't
That's
have
interesting.
character issues. He's a good guy. It's more, am I
He's a
available?
he's a champion. Yeah, it's more if he's available to play. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
He's
big
definitely
offseason.
talented, super talented.
And the Celtics, they have flexibility to do things, whether it's like you said, looking to move on beyond Brown, or just improving the team. Like there's a like it's easy to kind of look at all the previous seasons and then combine it with this one. And they should have got by 3-1, but they weren't gonna win it. They weren't gonna get to the finals, and the biggest reason is because there's a talent deficiency. And this roster is not a championship roster
Mhm.
as currently constructed. So you
So,
can
Jim,
go a couple different directions, but it needs to be better, and they need to show a willingness to from ownership. That's
yeah.
the biggest thing of this offseason. What's ownership going to do?
Yeah, so we should probably do our homework about who are the free agents and all that stuff. So we're on top of that. Um, we can end this pod soon because it's almost been an hour, and I don't think our listeners listen for that long.
I just want to
Um,
ask this one last thing. You texted Missoula should be fired. Is that an emotional text or is that something you believe?
that was an emotional text, and
Okay.
but I think there is a reason for him to be fired. You can make
Yeah.
the argument that it's justified. The way this team is lost under him is not okay. They've been the favorites in all those series, and they've lost the majority of those series at home. So I would be okay with a shake. I'd be okay with a major shakeup to this team with the coaching and with the players. I'd be okay with it. I'm open to everything.
If my exit interview, here's where I'd be open to it. If my exit interview with him was, okay, let's reassess this series. Tell me what you would have done differently. And if those answers weren't satisfactory, as I was slow to the trigger making these adjustments, or I should have tried this. I got to get better in game adjustments, and that's what I'm going to study this offseason in the playoffs or
Mhm.
series adjustments. Then to me, I'd be concerned.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem with Joe. I
Could be.
think I think there's an ego there um, that works and connects with the players, and most importantly to Jason Tatum. But even Jalen Brown made a comment about how some of these
Sure.
guys, yeah, that to me, that's kind of calling out your coach.
Yeah, I didn't love Jalen Brown's comments last night completely.
Well, I'm ready for changes.
I think there wasn't enough reflection on his personal responsibility for the series. I I couldn't tell if he was throwing shade at the coach or the shade at Tatum, saying this is how we were playing before he came along with that last comment, or maybe he wasn't doing either. But they
They
weren't
weren't good.
lovely. No, they weren't great things to say. I didn't think, and I hate to do that with post game comments and stuff, but I just they weren't super.
You know,
You know, hey, Missoula, he did an exceptional job during the regular season, but you're not paid to coach the regular season when you're the Boston Celtics head coach.
yeah.
It's about what happens next, and
And I'll say
it
this:
wasn't
I
great.
mean, if they do go in another direction, I trust Brad Stevens to find the next coach because he found a diamond in the rough with Missoula. And sometimes good coaches need to be fired for the team. Missoula will be good somewhere else, and he might still be good here. But sometimes the change just needs to happen. Um, we'll see what we'll see what happens with that. But I have a lot of trust in the GM um, with whatever these off-season decisions are going to be. I just hope that ownership gives him more freedom to actually bring in talented players and not have to find Nimi Ketas and the Jordan Walshes to actually go out there and just get a superstar and star players, and let's go compete for a championship. So
Can I say one thing on that too? Is like, can the media stop celebrating when the Celtics save money and
I know.
like get under this cap and this great trade and like you didn't maximize your opportunities at the deadline. Maybe they weren't there, but this was not. There's an argument to be made. Let's say Simons doesn't get hurt. You would have been better off with Anthony Simons and Luka Gazer and Nimi Cater as your centers, and Simons coming off the bench as a fire thrower because maybe that saves your ass in Game 5
Yeah.
as a flamethrower. Just comes in
Yeah.
and just starts getting super hot and nothing Philly can do. We saw that guy do it a million times when he was here. Like, so like I just want to like, can we stop with that? Can we stop? Oh, this is so smart. What they're doing. It's ultimately like, yes, there are penalties.
I mean,
It's ultimately just saving money for your own.
Indiana went out and got Zubac. All it was 2 first-round picks.
Yep.
You could have offered 3 first-round picks, and you're moving on.
Who would have been better against the Embiid, Zubac or the cast of characters you had in the series?
If you had Zubac, that series is over in 5.
Yep.
And we're talking about beating the Knicks and going to the NBA Finals.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
You didn't want to paint the backs.
Guy that was probably all NBA last year and just whatever. No, it's a great point.
So
all right, on that, that's it, folks.
Yeah. Couple Game 7s, people. I hope you enjoy them. All right, Jim.
See you.
Yep.
What were all those dreams we shared those many years ago? What were all those plans we made now left beside the road? Behind us here on the road. More than friends I always pledge, 'cause friends they come and go. People change, it's just everything I wanted to grow. We just want to grow. Slide on next to me. I'm just a human being. I will take the blame just the same. This is not me. You see, believe I'm better than this. Don't leave me so cold or buried beneath the storm. I just want to hold on and know I'm worth your love enough. I don't think there's such a thing.
They're going to call it a half foul as part of the Fan First Sports Network. All production is done in-house, part of Get the Hell Off My Yard Productions.